In many ways, joy is wisdom. It's also a survival skill. Hello, family, and welcome back to Vibe Check. I know I said this back in January, but the truth still remains that 2025 has been a lot. And if you have felt like joy has been hard to come by lately, or like even thinking about happiness feels either impossible or inappropriate, I want to chat with you today because I have been feeling this way too. To briefly recap just some of what we've been navigating this year, this summer alone has brought record-breaking heat waves. There is ongoing turbulence across the globe. There are families being torn apart. There are people who are starving, including children. And as a result, there's so much grief. There is so much tiredness and so much collective weariness being felt. If you're someone who is sensitive or empathic or tuned in the way that I am, then you're likely feeling it in your spirit and your nervous system too, right? It's almost as if just when we think we've seen it all or that it can't possibly get worse, there's always something new that reminds us just how heavy the world can be. There's something I've been noticing lately, and maybe you've noticed it too. It's this kind of read the room pressure that says, if you're not posting about what's happening in the world, if you're not posting about tragedy 24/7, then you must not care. If you are online laughing and dancing or simply living, then you must be bypassing what's actually happening. Now, accountability absolutely matters. Collective responsibility matters a lot. So, I'm not talking about instances where it's clear that folks are blatantly ignoring or bypassing the reality of what we're going through for the sake of being neutral and not taking sides and not being too political and staying in a high vibration, right? I'm not talking about the good vibes only folks. I think what worries me is just how quickly we forget that people are complex and layered beings. That someone can post a meme 1 minute and then be organizing in their community the next, even if they're not sharing it online. I think we forget that joy and grief can exist side by side. I hope you're receiving this with the care I intend to share it with. I just think it's really important to sit with who benefits when we believe our suffering is the only way to prove we care, and who profits when we burn out trying to earn our right to feel joy. In a social media landscape where folks are so quick, and I mean so quick, to call out others, including for not saying or doing enough during times of crisis, I think a lot of us feel the pressure to stay informed and to speak out and to be aware, and that matters. But we were never built to hold everything all at once. We were never meant to be this plugged in where it's all in your face every single time you pick up your phone. If I could get personal for a second, part of me stepping back from YouTube for a bit last month, besides making space for the editorial project that I mentioned, was because I was trying to figure out how to show up across my platforms in a way that felt true. As someone who lives at the intersection of journalism and healing work, I carry a deep responsibility to stay aware of how global events impact our well being. You can't separate those things. What's happening around us and our well being very much go hand in hand. And I never want my work to spiritually bypass the realities of the world we live in. But even in the heaviness, I have had days where I've had to let myself unplug from the headlines and just exist. Sometimes that means going for a bike ride. Sometimes it means scrolling and laughing at mindless memes. And I will admit that sometimes I feel really guilty for that. But those small moments are medicine. And I'm learning not to apologize for the joy that I seek and the joy that I feel in my body in those moments where I give myself the space and permission to feel it. So I guess I say all this to say when joy starts to feel like a waste of time or an avoidance of reality, you're not alone in this feeling. And with today's conversation, I really want to offer you a space to reclaim your joy because it's necessary. In many ways, joy is wisdom. It's also a survival skill. And even when it feels difficult to grasp onto, it's still yours, my love. And I also think it's really important to be gentle with one another right now because many of us are doing the best we can with what we have and where we are. There are so many of us who are fighting personal battles and going through personal tribulations on top of everything that's happening right now. Some of those things are compounded by mental health challenges and other things that may make it difficult for us to show up in full capacity all the time. So, on that note, I want to ask you, have you ever felt guilty for laughing or for resting or for simply enjoying yourself during hard times? And if so, what helped you move through that? I'd love to hear your reflections in the comments. Again, to be clear, when I say joy, I don't mean toxic positivity or pretending that everything is fine. That is not what this conversation is about. I am talking about the kind of joy that could hold grief in one hand and hope in the other. So I was doing a little research online and I looked into what psychologists and healers and organizers are saying. And across the board, they agree that finding joy in hard times is not selfish, but essential. Why? Because joy builds emotional resilience. It supports physical health by reducing stress hormones, boosting immunity, and protecting our heart health. Joy sparks creativity, which is vital for reimagining the future. It also strengthens connection and it sustains us when the fight is long and the future feels far away. Think about a moment you may have shared with a friend recently. Maybe you were venting, feeling tired, feeling depleted, and then they probably said something ridiculous and you just broke out in laughter. I'm talking about one of those loud, ugly, deep, healing, I can't breathe laughs, right? It probably didn't fix everything, but it gave you oxygen and it reminded you that you're still human. Now, I also want to talk about finding space for joy in a society built on power and greed because it is not lost on me that many of us were never taught how to access joy without guilt, especially if you come from a marginalized background. Joy may have been something dismissed or even punished. Systemic oppression is not just about laws and policies. It's about being told again and again that your peace and your pleasure and your rest don't matter. And yet, despite all that, we keep finding our way back. We keep finding our way back to rhythm, to laughter, to each other. We find our way back to block parties and cookouts, to ballroom, to drum circles, to Sunday dinners, to carnival. Even rest itself is a form of reclamation. And I just broke out in chills all across the right side of my body. Whew. Shout out to Trisha Hersey and all those in the Rest as Resistance movement, because ain't that a word? Joy is our legacy. And I want to invite you to imagine what would it look like if our communities were saturated in joy? And I don't mean occasionally, but all the time. More murals, more music, more moments of rest. And I'm inviting you to imagine this because our ancestors didn't just survive. As I've mentioned before on this channel, they sang and they danced and they laughed to keep from crying the way that many of us instinctively do, right? And often they did both things at once. Joy has always been part of the revolution. From pride celebrations that began as riots to Black folks creating joy through language and music and soul in the midst of brutality to Indigenous communities honoring ceremony through centuries of erasure. Joy says, I'm still here. We're still here. And we deserve to feel alive. In a world that profits from our pain, joy is a sacred interruption. And I know that many of us are tired. I know that many of us are grieving futures we thought we'd have, and we're holding so much. So let this be a soft reminder that if you are a healer, a caregiver, a movement worker, someone who has constantly poured into others, especially in this present moment, you still get to feel good. You still get to laugh. You still get to dance. You still get to rest, to play, to dream. Joy is both the seed and the spark that keeps us from burning out completely. This month's theme on the channel is Play for Keeps. And to me, that means we're not brushing up against joy and then just walking away. We are keeping it. We are claiming it. We are building lives around it like it's a flame that we refuse to let die out. Joy is foundational and we deserve it, not in spite of the pain, but because of the pain. And I want you to know that your softness is not weakness, it's strategy. Your rest is not laziness, it's lineage. Your joy is your homecoming. Take that nap, go to the concert, say no to burnout. You don't have to wait for the world to lighten to let light in. In fact, the world could use your light. Joy is yours and you get to keep it. If this message resonated, I think you'll love this episode of Vibe Check. It's a really fitting companion to today's message. I love you. I'm so glad you're here, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.